Imagine this. You wake up one day and everything feels different. The world hasn't changed, the sun still rises, the streets are still busy, and life hums along as it always has. But something inside you has shifted. You look around and realize, with a sinking clarity, that nothing around you makes sense. The job you've worked so hard for feels hollow. The relationships you've built seem superficial. The goals you've chased, success, wealth, recognition, now feel like empty shells, devoid of meaning. You're struck by a question so profound, it stops you in your tracks. What is the point of all this? This isn't just a passing thought. It's a seismic shift in your understanding of existence. You've stumbled into what philosophers call the absurd, the glaring contradiction between humanity's search for meaning and the universe's apparent indifference. You're not alone in this realization. It's a question that has haunted thinkers for centuries, from the existentialists to the mystics. But now, it's personal. It's your question, and it demands an answer. Here's the paradox. We are meaning-seeking creatures in a universe that seems to offer none. We build lives, create art, form relationships, and strive for greatness, all in pursuit of something that feels inherently meaningful. Yet when we look closely, the universe doesn't care. Stars explode, species go extinct, civilizations rise and fall, all without purpose or intent. The cosmos operates on cold mechanical laws, indifferent to our hopes, dreams, and fears. So, why do we keep searching for meaning in a world that seems devoid of it? This isn't just an intellectual exercise, it's a deeply emotional and psychological struggle. The absence of meaning can feel like a void, a black hole that threatens to swallow everything you hold dear. It can lead to despair, nihilism, or even a quiet resignation to the monotony of life. But what if this void isn't a curse? What if it's an invitation, a call to create your own meaning in a world that refuses to provide one? This is where Friedrich Nietzsche enters the picture. Nietzsche, the 19th century philosopher, is often misunderstood as a prophet of nihilism, someone who declared that God is dead and left humanity to wallow in meaninglessness. But Nietzsche's real message was far more radical and far more hopeful. He didn't just diagnose the problem, he offered a way out. He believed that the death of traditional meaning, whether religious, cultural, or societal, wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It was an opportunity for humanity to rise above its limitations and create its own values, its own purpose, its own meaning. But here's the catch. This isn't easy. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront the darkest parts of yourself. It means letting go of the comforting illusions that have shielded you from the harsh truths of existence. It means embracing the chaos, the uncertainty, and the inherent absurdity of life, and finding a way to thrive within it. So, let's return to that moment. The moment you woke up and realized that nothing made sense. What if that moment wasn't a crisis, but a catalyst? What if it was the first step toward a deeper, more authentic way of living? What if the absence of meaning isn't a problem to be solved, but a challenge to be embraced? And what if, by facing this challenge head-on, you could discover a kind of meaning that is more profound, more personal, and more powerful than anything you've ever known? These are the questions we'll explore in the sections to come. We'll dive into the psychological and philosophical roots of this existential dilemma, uncovering the hidden forces that shape our search for meaning. We'll examine the unseen consequences of living in a world that seems indifferent to our deepest desires. And, most importantly, we'll explore Nietzsche's radical solution, a way of thinking and living that doesn't just accept the absurdity of existence, but transforms it into a source of strength and creativity. But before we go any further, let's pause and sit with this question. What does it mean to live in a world without inherent meaning? Let it linger in your mind. Let it unsettle you. Because this question isn't just a philosophical abstraction, it's a mirror, reflecting the deepest fears and desires of your own psyche. And it's only by staring into this mirror that you can begin to find the answers you're searching for. Now let's take the first step into the abyss. To understand why the search for meaning feels so urgent and so elusive, we must first confront the forces that shape our perception of the world. These forces are not just external, they are deeply embedded in our psychology, our culture, and our history. They are the invisible threads that weave the fabric of our reality, and they often operate without our conscious awareness. At the heart of this dilemma is a fundamental tension, the clash between our innate desire for meaning and the universe's apparent indifference. This tension isn't new. It's a theme that has echoed through the works of philosophers, psychologists, and artists for centuries. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, a reservoir of shared human experiences and archetypes that shape our understanding of the world. Arthur Schopenhauer described it as the will to live, a blind, insatiable force that drives all living beings, yet offers no ultimate purpose. Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist philosopher, framed it as the absurd, the conflict between our need for meaning and the universe's silence. But why does this tension exist? Why do we, as humans, feel such a profound need for meaning in a world that seems to offer none? The answer lies in our evolutionary history. As social, self-aware beings, we have developed the capacity to reflect on our existence, to imagine the future, and to question our place in the cosmos. This ability has allowed us to build civilizations, create art, and explore the mysteries of the universe. But it has also left us with a deep-seated anxiety, a fear that our lives might be insignificant, that our struggles might be in vain, that our existence might be nothing more than a fleeting blip in the vast expanse of time. This anxiety is amplified by the cultural and societal forces that shape our lives. From a young age, we are taught to pursue certain goals, success, wealth, status, love, as if they hold the key to a meaningful life. We are told that happiness lies in achieving these goals, that fulfillment comes from external validation. But what happens when we achieve these goals and still feel empty? What happens when we realize that the promises of society, the promises of meaning, are nothing more than illusions? This is where Nietzsche's critique of modern society becomes particularly relevant. Nietzsche saw the cultural values of his time, Christian morality, Enlightenment rationalism, and the pursuit of progress, as forms of slave morality, systems of belief, designed to suppress individual creativity and freedom. He believed that these values had become outdated, that they no longer served the needs of a rapidly changing world. In their place, he called for the creation of new values, values that would allow individuals to embrace their unique potential and create their own meaning. But Nietzsche's vision wasn't just a critique of society, it was also a profound insight into the human psyche. He understood that the search for meaning is not just an intellectual exercise, it is a deeply emotional and psychological struggle. It requires us to confront our fears, our insecurities, and our darkest desires. It requires us to question the beliefs and assumptions that have shaped our lives. And it requires us to take responsibility for our own existence, to become the authors of our own stories. This is where the concept of the shadow comes into play. Carl Jung described the shadow as the hidden, unconscious part of the psyche, the repository of all the traits, desires, and impulses that we reject or suppress. According to Jung, the shadow is not something to be feared or avoided. It is a source of immense power and creativity. By integrating the shadow, by embracing the parts of ourselves that we have disowned, we can unlock our full potential and create a more authentic, meaningful life. But this process is not easy. It requires us to confront the parts of ourselves that we would rather ignore: the anger, the jealousy, the fear, the shame. It requires us to question the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we are capable of. And it requires us to let go of the illusions that have shielded us from the harsh truths of existence. This is the hidden problem at the heart of the search for meaning. We are trapped in a web of cultural conditioning, psychological defenses, and existential fears. We are taught to seek meaning outside ourselves, in the approval of others, in the achievement of external goals, in the comfort of familiar beliefs. But this external search is ultimately futile. It leads to a cycle of dissatisfaction, disillusionment, and despair. So, how do we break free from this cycle? How do we find meaning in a world that seems to offer none? The answer lies in a radical shift in perspective, a shift that Nietzsche called the revaluation of all values. It requires us to question everything we have been taught, to challenge the assumptions that have shaped our lives, and to create our own values, our own purpose, our own meaning. But this is not a task for the faint of heart. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. It requires us to confront the void, the abyss of meaninglessness, and to find a way to thrive within it. It requires us to become what Nietzsche called the Übermensch, the individual who creates their own values and lives authentically, in spite of the absurdity of existence. In the next section, we will explore the unseen consequences of this hidden problem, how the search for meaning shapes our personal and societal realities, and how it silently influences our behavior, our emotions, and our identity. We will delve into the cognitive biases, neurological insights, and cultural conditioning that keep us trapped in this cycle, and we will begin to uncover the path to breaking free. But before we move forward, let's pause and reflect on this question. What are the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you are capable of? Are these stories serving you, or are they holding you back? Are they helping you find meaning, or are they keeping you trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction and despair? This is the first step toward breaking free, to question the stories, the beliefs, and the assumptions that have shaped your life. And it is only by confronting these hidden forces that you can begin to create a new story, one that is more authentic, more meaningful, and more aligned with your true self. Now let's take the next step into the abyss. The search for meaning is not just a philosophical quandary. It is a force that silently shapes every aspect of our lives. It influences the choices we make, the relationships we form, the goals we pursue, and even the way we perceive reality. But because this search is often unconscious, its consequences are rarely examined. We are like sailors navigating a vast ocean, unaware of the currents that pull us in directions we never intended to go. One of the most profound consequences of this search is the way it distorts our perception of reality. Cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that help us make sense of the world, often lead us astray. For example, The confirmation bias causes us to seek out information that supports our existing beliefs, while ignoring evidence that contradicts them. This bias is particularly dangerous when it comes to the search for meaning. We cling to beliefs, ideologies, and narratives that promise to give our lives purpose, even when they are based on flawed assumptions or outright falsehoods. We become trapped in echo chambers, surrounded by people who reinforce our worldview, and we lose the ability to question, to doubt, to think critically. Another consequence is the way it shapes our emotional lives. The fear of meaninglessness, what existentialists call angst, can manifest as anxiety, depression, or a pervasive sense of emptiness. This fear is not just a psychological state, it is a neurological one. Studies have shown that the brain's default mode network, which is active when we are not focused on the outside world, is closely linked to self-referential thinking and rumination. When we are not engaged in meaningful activity, our minds tend to wander into dark territories, rehashing past mistakes, worrying about the future, and questioning the purpose of our existence. This can create a vicious cycle. The more we search for meaning, the more we feel its absence, and the more we feel its absence, the more desperate our search becomes. But perhaps the most insidious consequence is the way it influences our behavior. In our quest for meaning, we often turn to external sources, career success, romantic relationships, material possessions, social media validation, to fill the void. These sources can provide temporary relief, but they are ultimately unsatisfying. They are like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. This is what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill, the tendency to return to a baseline level of happiness no matter how much we achieve or acquire. We chase one goal after another, hoping that the next one will finally bring us the fulfillment we crave, only to find ourselves back where we started. This behavior is not just a personal problem, it is a societal one. Modern society is built on the promise of progress, the idea that through technology, science, and economic growth, we can create a better, more meaningful world. But this promise is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it drives innovation and improvement. On the other, it creates a culture of perpetual dissatisfaction. We are constantly bombarded with messages that tell us we are not enough, that we need to be richer, thinner, smarter, more successful, more popular. This creates a collective sense of inadequacy, a feeling that no matter how much we achieve, it will never be enough. This societal pressure is compounded by the way we are conditioned to think about meaning. From a young age, we are taught that meaning is something to be found, not created. We are told that it lies in external achievements, getting good grades, landing a prestigious job, finding a life partner, raising a family. But this external focus can lead to a kind of existential outsourcing, a reliance on others to define our purpose and validate our worth. We become like actors in a play, performing roles that have been scripted for us, rather than authors of our own lives. This conditioning is reinforced by cultural narratives that glorify certain types of meaning while dismissing others. For example, Western culture tends to prioritize individual achievement and material success while undervaluing community, spirituality, and personal growth. This narrow definition of meaning can leave many people feeling alienated and unfulfilled, especially those who do not fit into the dominant cultural mold. It can also lead to a kind of existential envy, a resentment of those who seem to have found meaning, and a sense of inadequacy for those who have not. But the consequences of this search go even deeper. They affect not just our individual lives, but the very fabric of society. When people feel disconnected from meaning, they are more likely to experience mental health issues, engage in destructive behaviors, and withdraw from social and civic life. This can create a feedback loop, where the erosion of meaning leads to social fragmentation, which in turn exacerbates the sense of meaninglessness. It is a vicious cycle that can have profound implications for the health and stability of society as a whole. So, what is the way out of this trap? How do we escape the unseen forces that keep us searching for meaning in all the wrong places? The answer lies in a radical shift in perspective, a shift that requires us to confront the void, to embrace the absurd, and to create our own meaning. But this is not an easy task. It requires us to question everything we have been taught, to challenge the assumptions that have shaped our lives, and to take responsibility for our own existence. In the next section, we will explore this radical shift in perspective, what Nietzsche called the revaluation of all values. We will examine how to break free from the cultural conditioning, cognitive biases, and emotional traps that keep us trapped in the search for meaning. And we will begin to uncover the path to a more authentic, more fulfilling way of living, one that embraces the chaos, the uncertainty, and the inherent absurdity of existence and transforms it into a source of strength and creativity. But before we move forward, let's pause and reflect on this question. What are the external sources of meaning you have been chasing, and how have they failed you? Are they truly fulfilling, or are they just temporary distractions from the void? Are they helping you live authentically, or are they keeping you trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction and despair? This is the first step toward breaking free, to recognize the unseen forces that shape your search for meaning, and to begin to question the assumptions that have guided your life. And it is only by confronting these forces that you can begin to create a new story, one that is more authentic, more meaningful, and more aligned with your true self. Now let's take the next step into the abyss. The realization that the search for meaning is often a trap, a cycle of chasing external validation, societal approval, and fleeting pleasures, can feel like standing at the edge of a cliff. Below you lies the abyss of meaninglessness, and behind you is the familiar but unsatisfying path you've been walking. The question is, do you turn back or do you leap? Nietzsche's answer is clear. You leap, but not into despair, into freedom. This is the essence of his philosophy, the call to rebel against the forces that keep us trapped and to create our own meaning. The first step in this rebellion is to confront the void. This is not a passive act. It is an active, deliberate choice to stare into the abyss and acknowledge its existence. Nietzsche famously wrote, "When you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." This is not a metaphor for despair. It is an invitation to transformation. By confronting the void, you strip away the illusions that have shielded you from the harsh truths of existence. You see the world as it is, chaotic, indifferent, and absurd. And you realize that the only meaning that exists is the meaning you create. This act of confrontation is deeply psychological. It requires you to integrate what Carl Jung called the shadow, the parts of yourself that you have rejected or suppressed. These are the fears, insecurities, and desires that you have buried because they are too painful or too uncomfortable to face. But the shadow is not your enemy. It is a source of immense power. By embracing your shadow, you reclaim the parts of yourself that you have disowned, and you unlock your full potential. This is not an easy process. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. But it is essential for breaking free from the cycle of external validation and creating a more authentic, meaningful life. The second step is to reject the values that have been imposed on you by society, culture, and tradition. Nietzsche called this the revaluation of all values. He believed that the values of his time, Christian morality, Enlightenment rationalism, and the pursuit of progress, were outdated and oppressive. They were designed to suppress individual creativity and freedom, and to keep people trapped in a cycle of conformity and dissatisfaction. To break free, you must question these values and create your own. This is not a call to nihilism, to reject all values, but a call to authenticity. It is an invitation to examine your beliefs, your desires, and your goals, and to ask, are these truly mine, or have they been imposed on me by others? This process of revaluation requires you to think critically about the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you are capable of. These stories are often shaped by cultural narratives, societal expectations, and past experiences. They can limit your potential and keep you trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction. To break free, you must rewrite these stories. You must become the author of your own life, rather than a character in someone else's script. This is what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the Übermensch, the individual who creates their own values and lives authentically, in spite of the absurdity of existence. The third step is to embrace the chaos and uncertainty of life. This is perhaps the most difficult part of the rebellion, because it requires you to let go of the need for control and certainty. We are conditioned to seek stability and predictability, but life is inherently unpredictable. The universe operates on chaos, not order, and the sooner you accept this, the freer you will be. This does not mean giving up on goals or aspirations. It means embracing the journey rather than fixating on the destination. It means finding meaning in the process of living, rather than in the outcomes you achieve. This shift in perspective is not just philosophical, it is practical. It requires you to cultivate what psychologists call psychological flexibility, the ability to adapt to changing circumstances, to tolerate discomfort, and to stay aligned with your values, even in the face of uncertainty. This is the essence of resilience. It is what allows you to thrive in a world that is inherently chaotic and unpredictable. The fourth step is to create your own meaning. This is the ultimate act of rebellion, to declare that your life has value not because of external achievements or societal approval, but because you say so. This is not a one-time act. It is an ongoing process. It requires you to continually examine your values, your goals, and your actions, and to ensure that they are aligned with your authentic self. It requires you to take responsibility for your own existence, to become the author of your own story. This process of creation is deeply personal. It cannot be dictated by anyone else. It must come from within. For some, it might involve pursuing creative passions, building meaningful relationships, or contributing to a cause greater than themselves. For others, it might involve exploring spirituality, engaging in self-reflection, or simply finding joy in the small moments of life. There is no right or wrong way to create meaning. The only requirement is that it must be authentic to you. The final step is to embrace the paradox of meaninglessness. This is the ultimate insight of Nietzsche's philosophy, that the absence of inherent meaning is not a curse, but a gift. It is what gives us the freedom to create our own meaning, to live authentically, and to embrace the full spectrum of human experience. It is what allows us to find beauty in the chaos, joy in the uncertainty, and strength in the struggle. It is what makes life worth living. In the next section, we will explore the ultimate truth, the final, most powerful realization that redefines how we see reality. We will examine how this insight can transform your understanding of existence and how it can empower you to live a more authentic, more meaningful life. But before we move forward, let's pause and reflect on this question. What would it mean to create your own meaning? What values would you live by? What goals would you pursue? What kind of life would you create if you were free from the constraints of societal expectations and external validation? This is the essence of the rebellion: to take responsibility for your own existence, to embrace the chaos and uncertainty of life, and to create a meaning that is uniquely yours. It is not an easy path, but it is the only path to true freedom. Now let's take the final step into the abyss. The journey to finding meaning in a meaningless world is not a linear path. It is a spiral, a series of revelations that deepen your understanding of existence and your place within it. Each step brings you closer to the ultimate truth, a truth so profound that it redefines how you see reality. This truth is not something that can be handed to you. It must be discovered within yourself. It is the culmination of all the insights, struggles, and rebellions that have brought you to this point. And it is the key to living a life that is not just meaningful, but transcendent. The ultimate truth is this: meaning is not something you find. It is something you create. This may sound simple, but its implications are radical. It means that the search for meaning is not a quest for an external object or a universal truth. It is an act of creation. It is a process of shaping your life according to your own values, desires, and aspirations. It is a declaration that your existence has value, not because of anything outside yourself, but because you say so. This realization is both liberating and terrifying. It is liberating because it frees you from the constraints of societal expectations, cultural narratives, and external validation. It allows you to live authentically, to pursue your passions, and to create a life that is uniquely yours. But it is also terrifying because it places the full weight of responsibility on your shoulders. There is no higher power, no cosmic plan, no external authority to guide you. You are the author of your own story, and the pen is in your hand. This is what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the Übermensch, the individual who creates their own values and lives authentically in spite of the absurdity of existence. The Übermensch is not a superhuman or a god. They are someone who has embraced the ultimate truth and taken responsibility for their own existence. They are someone who has stared into the abyss and found the courage to create meaning in a meaningless world. But how do you embody this truth in your own life? How do you move from understanding to action, from insight to transformation? The answer lies in a series of paradigm shifts, changes in how you see yourself, your world, and your place within it. The first shift is from seeking to creating. For most of your life, you have been taught to seek meaning outside yourself, in relationships, careers, achievements, and possessions. But this external search is ultimately futile. It leads to a cycle of dissatisfaction, disillusionment, and despair. The only way to break free is to shift your focus inward, to recognize that meaning is not something you find, but something you create. This means taking responsibility for your own existence and shaping your life according to your own values and desires. The second shift is from certainty to possibility. We are conditioned to seek stability and predictability, but life is inherently uncertain. The universe operates on chaos, not order, and the sooner you accept this, the freer you will be. This does not mean giving up on goals or aspirations. It means embracing the journey rather than fixating on the destination. It means finding meaning in the process of living, rather than in the outcomes you achieve. The third shift is from fear to courage. The absence of inherent meaning can be terrifying, but it is also an opportunity. It is an invitation to step into the unknown, to take risks, and to embrace the full spectrum of human experience. This requires courage, the courage to confront your fears, to embrace your shadow, and to live authentically, even in the face of uncertainty. The fourth shift is from conformity to authenticity. Society is built on conformity, on the idea that there is a right way to live and that deviation from this path is a failure. But this is a lie. There is no right way to live. There is only your way. To live authentically is to reject the values and expectations that have been imposed on you and to create your own. It is to become the author of your own story, rather than a character in someone else's script. The fifth shift is from despair to joy. The realization that life has no inherent meaning can lead to despair, but it can also lead to joy. When you embrace the ultimate truth, you free yourself from the burden of seeking external validation and societal approval. You find joy in the process of creation, in the act of living authentically, and in the small moments of beauty and connection that make life worth living. This is the ultimate truth, that the absence of inherent meaning is not a curse, but a gift. It is what gives us the freedom to create our own meaning, to live authentically, and to embrace the full spectrum of human experience. It is what allows us to find beauty in the chaos, joy in the uncertainty, and strength in the struggle. It is what makes life worth living. As you stand at the edge of the abyss, remember this: the void is not your enemy, it is your canvas. The chaos is not your prison, it is your playground. The uncertainty is not your curse, it is your freedom. And the meaning you create is not just a reflection of who you are, it is a testament to what you can become. So, take the leap, embrace the ultimate truth, and create a life that is not just meaningful, but transcendent. This is the end of the journey and the beginning of a new one.